Good morning. Today is Sunday, October 8th, 2023. This is the weekly Bitcoin price forecast. So, looking at where Bitcoin went in the last week and looking at where it could potentially go in the future. So, this is the start of October. So, we're about a little over a week into October at this point. So, again, pretty much been ranging for most of 2023 at this point. So, we had these two major run ups in January and March, a little minor run up in June as well to kind of get us up to this peak. But if you kind of look backwards in time, you can see that we've pretty much been ranging ever since March. But I mean, good news ahead. In September, we did pull off a rare positive month. So normally September is a month where it's actually the worst performing month for Bitcoin for whatever reason. But this month was last month was a positive month, and then we started this month on a good note as well. And expect to continue to see that to move up over the course of October, just based on what I'm seeing right now. So yeah, positive September. Great start to October. I don't even think we have a wick there. I think we just went straight up. Yeah, at that point we didn't even come down. We just continued on to the upside. Let's look at the weekly chart. Looking at the weekly chart again, you can start to see this range a little bit more clearly. So again, this major rally in January, a little bit of sideways action, the drop from Silicon Valley Bank right here, and then a major shot to the upside, and then pretty much a whole bunch of ranging ever since then. But as you can see, we had this period of low volatility. Like these candles really didn't go anywhere for months. So late June, ever since this last rally, you had late June, which didn't really do anything into July, into August, and then you had this huge drop. This was around Evergrande and I want to say SpaceX news about them potentially selling their Bitcoin. Notice you haven't really heard anything about that since then, which leads me to believe that that was orchestrated because those two pieces of news came out right next to each other. But anyway, this week, right here, you went up to fill the Chicago Mercantile Exchange gap, so CME, but then immediately rejected to the downside. And then finally, you started to see some green candles. Into September, you had a good start to the month, and then a major rally kind of coming towards the end of the month, and then you moved on into October. So that's kind of what we're looking at this point. Again, still very much so in this range. I've said it many, many times before. We're gonna have to break above 32,000 before we have any hopes of going anywhere. So definitely taking longer than originally expected, but it's all part of the game, right? You got to play it. At this point, I've been saying that we've kind of the Bulls have held this $25,000 line very admirably over the past couple months. So like we tried in June, and then we tried in August, September, and then October. We just said forget it, we're going back to the upside. So at this point, I've been saying for weeks that we could go down to about 20,000, which is right here. I am less inclined to believe that at this point. Again, everything is still possible, but probabilities are showing in favor of the move to the upside. So we can put the drawings on here, see what we have. So again, we've talked about these. Listen, my chart has stayed the same for weeks at this point. You have your daily demand here. You have your $20,000 zone here that I was talking about that we could potentially go to. But again, I'm not super optimistic at that point. Right now, we're kind of at the midway point of this range. So we've tested the lows of the range. Oh, I don't need that. Tested the lows of the range. The Bulls defended 25,000. And now if you put a cursor right here, you can see like we're pretty much at the halfway point. So above is 50%, below is 50%. So it's kind of a toss up now. We've kind of gotten back above. We closed above this trend line. It doesn't look like this was a retest to go back further, but we're kind of at the middle right here of this trend line. We could potentially see that go up. The next test that we'll probably see is about 28,600. This is going to serve as a zone of additional resistance, I would say. So if I put this right here, a draw zone, you'll probably see some resistance right here. But once you get above that, there's not really anything stopping it. So we're close. We're pretty close. You see, if we get above 30,000, then there's really nothing but wicks here. There are these wicks that have been tested, and the thing is, like every time you test something, it gets a little bit weaker. So if you look at it here, we ran up and we got to about 30,000. Then we tried again. The second time, it's a little bit weaker. We got all the way up to 31,000. 800, almost 32,000. And now, again, like we come down here, this zone got tested and went back up, and then it came back down to the same place and tested and went back up. So I'm believing that this daily demand zone is actually it's actually stronger at this point than this long term resistance zone. We've tested it several times, so 1, 2, and we're looking for a third. I just don't see that holding up since then. Well, after that, I should say. There's a lot of, even though there hasn't been a lot of movement in crypto or Bitcoin over the past couple weeks to months, really. I mean, there was some excitement pretty much all the way through here. This was all, quality movement, but then you started getting here and nothing happened. Just super low volatility. So really, ever since July, it had just kind of fallen off a cliff in terms of volatility. But even though there hasn't been a ton of movement, I would say there hasn't been a ton of bad news either. I mean, if I'm looking forward, just this past week, you had the UK banks basically saying that they were going to allow their banks to hold 2% of their total assets in Bitcoin by 2025. So over the next 2 years, you have the Bitcoin halving in 6 months. So in April, we're gonna have that event where the production amount of Bitcoin per day is going to cut in half. So again, your daily supply is going to cut in half, meaning that's going to, and you have either a stagnant or an increasing demand. So decreasing supply, increasing demand. What does that do to price? That sends it up. So at this point, I'm not worried at all about the direction of price. I know where it's going. It doesn't take a degree in economics to kind of look at the situation and see what the overall long-term path is. But like I said, you have about 6 months until the Bitcoin halving. You have on the horizon, which has been the big narrative since June. This was this candle right here. You have the Bitcoin ETF. So the Bitcoin ETF is something that we've been talking about for months and months at this point, ever since June, really, when a lot of big banks started to announce it. So you have about 3 to 6 months until that happens. This is what all the analysts are saying. They're not going to let this run into the halving. I just don't see it. Yeah, so I mean, that's going to bring in billions and potentially hundreds of billions of dollars into the space, into the crypto space. That'll be used for, again, it's going to help to rally price. And then the other thing that happened is XRP ended up, I want to say the SEC ended up appealing the case that they lost back in, I can't remember what month that was, but Ripple ended up getting favored by the judge, saying Ripple's not a security. The SEC wanted to challenge that, but they were unsuccessful. The judge just said, hey, you don't really have any grounds for an appeal. We're not going to allow you to do that. So, I mean, that's another huge win for the crypto space, especially, when we're talking about securities law and all that type of stuff. So it's good. We're in a good space. Even if things are moving slow, it's all good. Again, you had this low, we formed a higher low, we formed a higher high, and now we're just waiting to see if this actually materializes into a higher low. This will have to break this point. At this point, it'll have to go to past 28,000, 28,500, and then I'll consider that to be a higher low. But again, these are good signs. You had no volatility, you had major upswings, you had your downswing, higher low, higher high, potential higher low, and then we could go up from there. So it's good to see a series of higher lows. Like, you'll probably get some type of kickback in this area. Like I said, this area is key. Once you get above 30,000 again, then it's going to be pretty much off to the races. I don't see us returning to these lows after that. So, the window of opportunity for getting Bitcoin at these lower prices is it's gradually closing. But if you're anywhere between 25,000 or 30,000, or hell, even 40,000, if you're in it for the long term, it does not matter. It doesn't matter, just because, again, the general direction of where it's going. But if you're trying to build a position, now is the best time. The best time to build a position is when nothing's happening. Most people won't get into Bitcoin until there's a fever pitch and the people on the news are talking about it, and it's all over Twitter and it's all over Instagram and stuff like that. This is the boring time. This is the boring time where, like, the money is made and, like, people, you kind of sit on your hands. And then eventually, you go forward and you go through the bull run, and then you make your gains, and then you kind of go from there. But if you're trying to build a long-term position, the best time to do it is right now, because I really don't see it going too much lower than this 25K number. just because of the fact that it's been defended so heavily. And every day that we move forward, we get a little bit closer to the bull run. We get a little bit closer to the halving. There's just so much stuff going on in 2024 that is positive for the crypto space overall. Countries are looking more and more at adoption and ways that they can get their hands into cryptocurrency. So it's all upside from here. It's definitely all upside from what I can see. Even if it retraces a little bit and goes back down, we understand what the long term direction is, and we're going to continue on with that. So I don't really have too much else. This has been, I mean, basically the forecast for the week. What we're looking at is for it to continue, potentially a little pullback, maybe down to here. Yeah, actually, I mean, I think that would be the most healthy, actually, to pull back down to about 27,000, and then to move on up to the upside, kind of filling that CME gap. But other than that, I don't really have too much. Hopefully this has been helpful. This has been Chris Talks Crypto. Check out christalkscrypto.com for any type of crypto resources, and I will see you guys on the moon. Take care.